Okay, so in this section of our project, we will present a general overview of what is low-tech, and then a perspective from low-tech, thinking low-tech from Latin America and from some examples of Latin American artists. After this, we will also talk a little bit about collective practice, artistic collective practice that we have identified, like that is in an in-between what we call Net.art and also social practice, also based a collective base in Argentina. So, but first of all, I wanted to present why we are talking about low-tech from this project that it's mainly focused in Net.art. So if Net.art was one of the answers and creations with the network technologies, and we have seen that the artworks considered as Net.art characterized by being critical from that technology and being anti-design, not user-friendly, and part of it has an anti-institutional tendency, it makes sense for us to talk about other type of artwork, but which also holds a critical perspective towards its technical environment. My research within this project has also focused on what is called low-tech, as it is one of the contrasting points that with Xian Yun we had identified between this ever-changing relationship between art and technology in South America and in Taiwan. From a very generalizing point of view, we could say that Taiwan is a country in which artists have worked with high technology, and on the contrary, in South America, we find movements of artists using low-tech. So here I included a very brief definition of what is low-tech. We can find different definitions. This is one given by an Argentinian researcher, Nadia Martín. And low-tech for her refers to the use of technological material of easy access, which might be obsolete or waste, and which explores the black box of the device. This concept of black box is also taken from Willem Flusser's theory. So when this happens, there is a subversion of the function for which those devices were initially conceived for. So some other characteristics of low-tech. Low-tech means using cheap technology, and we also refer to when we use cheap hardware or software. It's independent from technology and distribution companies. It's accessible and works with open code. It mainly questions also the 2-year update cycle of a device. And is simple and domestic use. So it's like what is called user level, assembled by users and not by machines. And it also refers to the use and reuse of devices which have been considered obsolete, as we also already mentioned in the general definition. So it refers to the modification of devices, possibility to explore the black box, works within the considerations that technology is non-neutral, but it contains internal politics. Oh, sorry. Low-tech devices can be modified, changed, and it also has an unstable or unfinished aesthetic. Other perspectives also add that low-tech artwork evades any recognizable or standardized visual style. I'm not fully sure of this, and I will argue this, my considerations towards this in the examples that I will present to you, because we will see that there's an aesthetic that we find that is repeated when using low-tech. And this other perspective also adds that it has a strong link with the process. Both in the production and also in the moment of that the audience interacts with the artwork. So also to understand low-tech, I wanted to make a contrast with what is high-tech, right? So when we talk about high-tech, it refers to complex processes of technological development that will have an impact on the human in a generalizing way. So due to their complexity, they require a big amount of technological supply, knowledge, and labor. And high-tech is related to centers which have been producing the knowledge and technology for a long time, which has led those to become hegemonic production centers. Another important aspect of high-tech is that it has universal claims. It is also developed with the idea that it will affect positively to the whole humanity. Therefore, low-tech could be understood as a political, ideological, and technological movement that does not have universal claims and which produces with the available resources. Low-tech can be produced anywhere and not only in the technological centers. Also, to give some other clarity of what is low-tech and which methods and techniques they use, I have included this slide. They use different methods of production and reassembly of devices. And they are mainly ways of reusing and reintroducing dead media into a new cycle of life for such objects. Here we see some images of what it's called circuit bending. And following the definition of US and UK researchers, Hertz and Parikka, circuit bending is a creative short circuiting of consumer electronics, primarily for the purpose of generating sound or visual output. These techniques takes found objects such as battery-powered children toys, as we see in the image, and inexpensive synthesizers and modifies them into DIY musical instruments and homemade audio generators. So this definition of circuit bending refers mainly to when they are used to create musical instruments, but we will see that they are also used to project images and different interactive installations. So it is very much related also to hardware hacking, DIY scene, and electronic recycle. And now moving to the specific perspective of low-tech from Latin America. So whenever talking of these topics, and as we have done throughout all this project, it is fundamental to contextualize. And as artist Brian McKern also explained to us, this Uruguayan artist that we have interviewed and we had a talk with him, that it's in another of our videos, he said that it's not the same to talk about low-tech from South America or the tendency of using low-tech in the US or in Europe. So every technological tool with its social forms of appropriation and use modelizes the discursive exchange and leaves specific traces on signifying surfaces. It is possible to distinguish that technological works involve as a support, but also as expressive and conceptual matter, an ideological system that, whether they assume it or not, operates in them. For Argentina and many other countries of Latin America, low-tech did not develop as a deliberately aesthetic, but it was the only exit to continue working and creating technopoetics or artworks with technological devices. And this is also information that I found from other researchers that I'm including in the bibliography section. And almost of all Latin American countries, except parts of Brazil and Mexico that are more powerful in these issues, there is a very people is used to commitment and to dialogue with the materials that are available. So regarding technology, it's not that it's produced in those countries, so there is a need to recycle it. So it is important to understand that Latin American countries are indeed consumers of high tech, like with computers or cell phones, like the more used devices. But when it refers to art, it is mainly low tech that is used. And those are the cases in which we have focused. Also, and I include the quote here of another researcher called Rodrigo Alonso, the use of low-tech within the arts offers a questioning gesture of the hyper-technologized imaginary spread globally due to the contrast that is presence suppose. In addition, it constitutes a rejection of the attitude of material and emotional detachment that promotes continuous technological replacement. So there are other very interesting considerations of the use of low-tech from South America, which has also been developed by Nadia Martín, this Argentinian researcher. She stated that low-tech resists reproducing the hegemonic technological imaginaries through deviation policies linked to a de-instrumentalization of the Western technical phenomenon. That is, through practices that dismantle the ideological systems inscribed in the same technologies that they used. But she also proposes another way to understand the use of low-tech, at least for Argentina, which is that she states that her approach to understand low-tech is an heterochronic proposal, as I put here. She relates low-tech to the modernizing project of Argentina from the early 20th century, which had a vernacular, and I quote, vernacular sensibility, a mode of technical imagination strongly associated with the marvelous, the fantastic, the belief in the possibility of imminent realization of the impossible. So this reading of low-tech, rather than emphasizing its marginal or imitative or deviational dimension, it recognizes an off-centered autonomous element with respect to the foreignizing ethical and aesthetic imaginaries. Martín explains that this peripheral condition of Argentina in relation to the technological and the scientific, it is not a contemporary condition, but a structural quality that she can even identify in the 1920s. For example, when radio started, there was already a crafty or amateur approach with a very practical intelligence, which used the materials that were available with the aim to restructure them and acquire a new function. Also, when paying attention to the literature and newspapers from that time, I'm talking about now like 1920s, the technical imagination awakened a wide field of fantasies like spiritualism and occultism. So, for example, at that moment, we're talking of the beginning of the use of radio and telephone. And this generated a concrete communication with the afterlife, and they broke with the parameters of time and space known up to the moment. For me, this was important to mention this approach as it is about recovering a historical trace of the local culture that vindicates the value of the failed, that highlights the importance of the fantastic, of the hidden, and the spectral that Argentina scientific development carries from its origin. Sorry, that was my cat. So the final approach that for me it's interesting to have in relation to low-tech, it's this one related to Hertz and Parikka, and this is an approach more from US and UK, but I think it's very much related to what we have talked about. And this is like an epistemo-archaeological approach towards low-tech, which is called zombie media. It refers to when devices which are considered waste or obsolete are modified and assembled into new constructions, and such materials and ideas become zombies that carry with them histories, but are also reminders of the non-human temporalities involved in technical media. Such epistemo-archaeological tasks are not of artistic interest, but tap into the ecosophical sphere in understanding and reinventing relations between the various ecologies across subjectivity, nature, and technology. So now I will present some of the examples as to, after all these more theoretical frameworks and ways of understanding the potentials and the considerations across low-tech within the artistic and also more expanded field. This artwork that we see here, it's called Power of Two. In Spanish is Potencia de Dos, by Argentinian artist Jorge Crowe. This artist has been working with circuit bending for many years. He even has he gives and offers workshops for kids in order to so as they can produce their own toys, their own games. So he has a very also like pedagogical approach. But this work that we see here, and I would like to try to take you to the video. And I'm stopping the presentation now because I think it's also interesting to see this. This artwork, it's from 2010, I think. So for this, he used a scanner, PC speakers, LCD panel, and an old laptop. This work explores the relationship between numbers, image, and sound, using at its core a low-cost integrated circuit designed to perform simple mathematical operations. Simultaneously, a projected image will create changing geometric patterns according to the sound that is heard. So the name, which is Power of Two, not only refers to the audiovisual representation of these arithmetic operations, but also to the quality of its physical interface, since the instrument is executed by placing two hands. Only one does not activate it in this control phase surface that we see. The amount of surface of skin in contact with the interface will determine the speed of the rhythmic sequence. So the other example which I wanted to share is from an artist from Chile. Her name is Constanza Piña Pardo. She's also very known with her with the name Corazón de Robota, which means like heart of a robot, but a female robot, because she has also a very strong work related to like cyberpunk but techno-feminist approach. She's actually been working also in Taiwan, and I think she's still working from there. So it's a very interesting also connection between artists working very strongly from South America, which have been already been producing and collaborating in Taiwan. So this artwork that I present here, it's called Kipu Electrotextile Pre-Spanning Computer. A kipu is like an ancestral textile that used to hold and was created to save and archive in a way stories, to make calculations, and it was a very important like source of archiving information. and of course very much related to oral histories. This project, so it's related to the ancient determination that beyond the sky that we all see, there is a calculating power that organizes everything. So this information that I'm providing from this project is written by the artist. The result is an open source textile computer based on an astronomical Inca quipu, one of the earliest computer systems. So the quipu, the textile that I just mentioned, is considered a computer system. Produced in an experimental creation laboratory together with 5 other women, this artist uses her artistic approach to interpret technology combined with her research on the similarities between this knot system, that is the quipu, and contemporary binary coding. So I don't have now an image of how quipus look, but it's a textile all created with knots. So for me, it was interesting to include this artwork as it articulated the use of also ancestral technologies. So when we're talking about low tech, it also allows us to go to technologies from other time frames. And this is also what was part of the zombie media concept, right? And for me, we can also relate this project with what we were talking about of the embodied interface concept, that it's the name of this project, as it includes the calculations done with the hand and foot fingers. So it's a knowledge from the body in relation to this technology. And I think that the previous example already also has an interesting case of the interaction of the body and devices. I have included this link here because there are more images which are interesting to understand this project, because this installation, also the computer device, works as an antenna of all the people who is walking through the installation and creates specific sounds because according to how many people is there. So the last example is also from an Argentinian artist called Leonello Zambón. He's a very well-known artist as well of from the country of because of his use of low tech, but also very much related to experimental music and sound art. So this specific example is called Parasitophonia. It's from 2010. And he created this precarious recording studio mounted on a bicycle, which he defined as a cabin for a nomadic DJing. So this work is a small mobile workshop for assembling bicycle parts and scraps of discarded motors that function as percussion instruments. The bike takes electricity from urban electricity boxes and can work also as a projector or beamer, and at the same time it works as a sound amplifier, extending its speakers tentacles that are powered by 12-volt battery charged by solar cells located under the public light. And I also think this is an interesting example because it shows that for this type of art, it's also interesting and important to be able to use the public space, to use different sources of energy, like this is using energy that is available in the urban space, but also including solar panels. And this artist has presented this, this work in museums, or it also provides this bicycle to be available for use of anybody who's interested. And as we see, it's also important to include the maps of, this is only like a very short one, but he offers also the map or the method of how you could replicate this artwork. And this is also something that it's shared throughout all the low-tech artists. So that was my part for low-tech. And I think that in these last examples, we could also find some relationships of low-tech and also starting to think about technologies from other time periods, as with the case of Constanza So the relation with ancestral technologies. And also, of course, this includes very strongly an anti-colonial perspective. That was also one of the values or aims of this project, by trying to create or search of other narratives in relation to art and technology and net art. And finally, I will present one example of a collective, which is called Iconoclasistas. It's an artistic collective formed by Pablo Ares and Julia Reisler. And they have a very strong activist and social practice experience in other artistic collectives, but since 2006 they have been working together under this name, Iconoclasistas, which means, of course, like to break icons, to go against icons. So we can briefly describe the work that they do by saying that their aim is to collectively systematize information related to certain problems of different territories. They're always invited by institutions like universities, museums, or by independent organizations. And they do previously a research of the issue that they will work about, and then they go to the place where the problem develops. And when I show the example, it will be more clear. And because for them, it's very important to work in situ, work in the territory with people who live there. By saying this, of course, it's already, it's a complexity to talk about this kind of artwork in relation to net art, because they have a very strong work in the territory. But I think it was interesting anyways, because they have, they appear as this in-between way of working that has a very important part of offline work through workshops and encounters, and then they digitalize all the materials that they create collective and all the knowledge that they create collectively and offer it online. So they create in the network a social space for exchange. And I have been very interested in this project in this artist for many years. And when thinking about net art, I also found some previous research done by Alicia Montes, which she claims that the work of this artist is related to, directly related to net art. And she claims, and I quote, "The creative practice of Iconoclasistas can be framed in what is called net art because of its neo-media nature, and above all, because of the objective it pursues, which is to produce on the net a public space for community exchange and non-institutionally mediated activism." The action plan of this group marks, on the other hand, the passage from consensualism, typical of the mass media era, to the characteristic political descent of the post-media era. This is a definition that this researcher takes from Guattari as well. And they claim that this way of acting allows to create utopias in a different way. So in order to leave a little bit of the abstract theory, I want to show you how they work. This is one of their projects that they did, which is called, in Spanish, is La República de los Cirujas, which is like Republic of Cirujas. Is a very specific term of people who lives and make their living from taking food or recycling resources from air dumps, wastelands. And there is a part outside the city of Buenos Aires where there is like a very low income area of people who live, and here you see it in the image, of what they can recycle from all this waste material. And in a Google map in the past, like this area was not identified at all, or the people who live there are not recognized. So what they do, this collective, they go to this territory and they work with people having workshops, and these people tell them which are the materials that they find in the wasteland, how do they clean the water, what are the risks of living like that, what is the relationship with the police, etc. So all this knowledge that is only available from the actual experience of the people, they put this together and they create this kind of maps for them. Like they are both they are both graphic designers, so they create these really clear maps, and they put all this information online, and they also, it's like an open source, and this information can continue growing. This artist already also, apart from putting all the information online, which I can show you their websites, they also they present their artwork in institutions like museums. And here we see how they would present the maps and some sort of installation referring to the knowledge that they have and the material that they have put together. Also, their work in public space is really important. This is this other example which I show here, and it's a case that they were invited to do this mapping of one area in Chile. So they create like this device or this box to be able to go throughout all the city, and they create the mapping with the information that the people in the public sphere provides to them. So of course, this is not like a super specific case of Net.art, but it is a case of a very important collective work and communitarism work in real life in a way, and then the translation of all this to their website. And I was researching what they were doing during 2020, because they cannot work anymore in public space because of the pandemic. And they have started to do all these workshops, of course, online. And they were saying that they are starting to develop new methodologies of work, because they, of course, cannot translate the workshops in the same way that they were doing them in the past. But they are creating some kind of like asking questions through emails, recollecting more informations and different understandings of those questions. And then they are also creating these maps through the resources that are available in the net. So yeah, I think that's the end of my part.